Well, thank you for all coming back at the end of the day, the last person. That makes you a little nervous to know who's coming or not coming too, doesn't it? And let me get this baby rolling here. I've noticed that some presenters use the microphone and some walk away. If it's okay with you, I'll walk away now and again. My voice usually carries pretty well, so that shouldn't be a problem. We will actually drive Rachel crazy if I move around too much though, right, Rachel? That'll be okay as well. First off, thanks for coming back. I always think if I'm going to present something to 50 people for 1 hour, that's equivalent to 50 hours. That's like a whole week's worth of work. And when you start thinking that way, you say, could what I'm going to say possibly be worth a whole week's worth of work? Well, it puts the pressure on me, doesn't it? And so hopefully you'll have some takeaways of what we can talk about this afternoon for a little bit. Let me also welcome you to Austin, Texas one more time. I saw when the hands went up, for a lot of you, this is the first time here. And hopefully you'll have a chance to check out the city. It's starting to be the great time of year to be in Austin. When you start getting close to October, it feels pretty nice here. And so we suffer through the Julys so that you can have the Septembers and Octobers here too. I also mentioned to a couple of our Korean colleagues here that on 21st Street and Guadalupe, which is that big blue building, it's actually a dorm. But in that dorm, there's a little food court. It's nothing fancy, but all my Korean friends like to go to Oma's kitchen if they get homesick for Korean food. So for those of you who are the Korean and you need some Korean food, aha, now she's listening, right? 21st Street and Guadalupe, big blue building called Doby Mall. And that's where you find the Korean food. Fast food, not a fancy restaurant, but all the Koreans really like it here that go to that. So if you need to get your Korean fix. I was just in Brazil last month with 20 Koreans. That's really, it was very interesting to travel with a group of Koreans in Brazil and experience. I've been going to Brazil for 35 years. I've never gone with Koreans before. It is so interesting to see the whole country from a new perspective when you travel with people from somewhere else. And so anyway, I'm kind of in a Korean mood lately because of that. We are going to talk this afternoon a little bit about some materials that we have created on how to use video for students that are more intermediate and advanced. I believe that we've all struggled with this, which is we live in a YouTube world. We know video is out there, but what do we really do with it? And I've found myself in that transition of I have more access to it, but just because I can show it doesn't mean I know what to do with it when I start working with students. And so that's one of the things that got us going on this project. The next thing that got us going on this project, and those of you who are working in the less commonly taught languages, you know that sometimes there's quite a bit out there for the beginners. But once you move up the ladder just a little bit more, it's even more difficult to figure out how to use materials for our intermediate and advanced students. And just because they're authentic materials doesn't make it easier for the advanced. We still need how to figure out what to do with it. And so hopefully we're going to address those two issues a little bit. How do we use video? How do we appease the students who are a little more intermediate and advanced? And what I really want to show is how these materials have helped me interact with students in new ways. So even though what I'm showing you is for Portuguese and Brazil, I really do hope that the ideas that would apply to everybody that's here as well. Don't feel bad if you can't say Conversa Brasileira. Nobody can. And so let's kind of move on from there. And so one of the things I've learned over the years with video is I like short things. I think my students get a lot more out of a 2-minute, 3-minute clip that I study in detail than they do to watch something that's really long and kind of do it superficially. And so on purpose, we try to create short video clips of a slice of Brazilian life and then dig really deep in that slice of life. And what I've found is the students that are a little lower, they just hope they can understand it. And the students that are a little higher, they can pick out a little bit more. And the students a little higher, we can say, did you see how they said that? And you know, as a non-native speaker, we could say the same thing, but we just don't say it the same way. And by having these video clips and study them in detail, now it gives us a chance to really pull it apart and really, really try hard to see if we can notice things that you wouldn't notice otherwise. And so they're very short, 2 to 3 minutes each. And we have right now in our collection of these materials, we'll show you about 35 clips, all slice of life, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. The other thing that happens when it comes to lictals is that since the materials are so scarce, if we have to lock ourselves into one textbook or one class, we're usually in trouble. And so, again, our mindset here is, can we create things that are independent of textbooks themselves? That means you can pick and choose. Use one or two, don't use them all. Add this to this class, don't add it to another one. If you have a textbook, add this to your textbook as well. I think for those of us that are in the lictals, there is value to having things that aren't bound to the actual textbook. And that's part of the idea of this too. They can be presented as a standalone, they can be studied in any order. And this is where it gets to be fun to say. The Conversa Brasileira is 100% online. It is 100% free. It is 100% no password restriction. And it's 100% open resource. Go ahead and play with it and do whatever you want to with it for your own language. In fact, I like this slide so much, I made a second slide that says the very same thing. Just so you can say it's 100% online, it's 100% free, it's 100% password, no password restriction, and it's 100% open resource. And in order for me to say that, you already heard the presentation earlier today about Coral and kind of what goes on at UT about the whole mindset of open resource, sharing things, retooling them, and all that. If we're not for a Coral, we would not have a Conversa Brasileira. There's just a neat marriage that's gone on. And later on when I show you this, we actually built these materials with grant money from the US government, from the IRS grants. And so it's just a beautiful blending of grant money that helped us create it, but a Coral which is there to help us distribute it and to put it in its final form. And so I just think we've had a lot of nice things that come together, and if I don't make enough plugs about how it was possible, it's got to be because we have a technical expertise that helped us create the materials at a quality which is higher than I could have ever done by myself. And now, because it was grant money that provided it for us, there's no reason why we should hold it as if it's ours that nobody else can have. I'm preaching to you by now, but it's with the idea that I think it's a real important concept, that if we have an open resource, we need to allow other people to retool it and use it for their own purposes. And what I really hope is that those of you who are in Korean or Japanese or Russian will say, you know what, we could tweak that. We could do that same sort of thing, but now we could apply it to our language as well. I don't think I've ever showed the same slide twice before in a presentation. That was kind of fun. Because I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of video clips on our web pages that we've used. And over the years, we had people talk about tons of different topics. And what dawned on me one day finally is my limitation was my camera was doing what Rachel's camera is doing today. One camera focused on one person, and there was no interaction. And so when we started this video clip, we said what we want are real people that are really going to say real things. We don't want it canned, we don't want it fake, we don't want it phony. And so we just got people together and let them make it up as they went along. We didn't have a special script. We didn't say use these specific words. We didn't say try this grammar out. We just gave them the situation and said you go with it. And then that allowed us to have natural people just kind of go on. The very first one we presented, it was about dogs. And the lady who was going to be our actor, she had a little baby. And so she brought her baby to our recording, but she needed a babysitter. The babysitter, another Brazilian friend of hers, the second she saw the dog, she went, "Oh, you cute little puppy." And she went up and rubbed his ears and everything. A total dog lady, you know? And we said to her, "Would you like to be in our video today?" and so Michele watched her own baby Well, Simone ended up being in our movie because she was just the dog lady. And that's what we were striving for, just this natural, choose the topic and let people do what they would normally do, and we'll keep what's good. And if it's not good, we say thank you very much, and we'll move on to somebody else. You know? So that was kind of the idea with that. But because we then had the grant money to help us out too, rather than have that one video camera, now we have multiple cameras, multiple angles. It looks pretty good when it's all said and done. So that was one of the nice things about this as well. So this one, for example, people are complaining in their cars about the traffic. You can see that we actually have 3 camera angles working on that one skit that they were performing for us. So the way we did this is we just asked Brazilians in town to get together, gave them the scenario, and they would record that scenario. After they recorded that scenario, we would then build the materials from that 2 or 3 minute clip. And one of the things that we wanted to provide students with, and we'll show you this when we start showing the actual materials, is I know for myself, I love subtitles. You know, I know that some people say, no, 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 you're cheating. I know that some people say you shouldn't see the words, but I don't have a lot of patience when I don't understand it. And so I like to go back and at least have the option to turn it on to say, what did he really say there? So I can see it written down. And so one of the options that we have with these video clips is we can turn on the transcript and while they're playing the videos, have the subtitles. And we added another little thing which actually worked out really cool, and that was we could color code the speakers on the subtitles. It all of a sudden made it really easy to follow along, where before it was really difficult to follow along. And Natalie is sitting in the back there. She's our tech, like everything woman. And at first when we had the color coding, she was okay with us. When we added a third person and needed a third color, she kind of looked at us like, come on, what are you doing? And then once we had 4 people with 4 colors. And so we really need to thank Natalie for solving the problem of color coding our subtitles the way it was going on. But one of the things I like about the videos is now we have the video, how do we help non-native speakers understand it? One way, provide a transcript and color code that transcript so that as they're following along, they have the option to do that. We also have a second option, which is turn on a translation button. And the translation then also accompanies the clip. So you can listen to it in the Portuguese, have the translation in the English. But notice that we're making them work a little bit. You have the button you got to turn on to get the transcript. You have a button to turn on to have the translation. And you really can't have them both side by side. You've got to make yourself switch back and forth. It's actually been pretty good to allow them to see the words in English if they really need it. But it's just natural speech enough that it gives them a sense of what's going on, but they've got to go back to the transcript again to actually get it word for word what they're really saying. And once again, that's color-coded. But to appease the people that say that's not a nice thing to do and we're helping the students cheat, there's also a button to turn off all the transcripts and all the translations. And so you can see how this works. As the movie's going on, you have the option to turn on, turn off transcripts and translations that are all color-coded. It really helps the students at whatever their level are at, whatever their comfort level is, to do that. And I know for me personally, I don't have a lot of patience with the things I don't understand. We sometimes forget how tired students get if they have to look up every other word, 20 words per page. We don't have a lot of patience with it, and so this gives us a chance to dig a little deeper into that. There's another feature that came out of this. We call them the pop-ups. I don't know if anybody else uses that word, huh, Natalie? But we have pop-ups. And this is because I was once watching MTV. I don't even want to confess that. I was watching MTV, and I noticed they had little things pop up on the screen as they were talking and giving little background information. And I thought, that is cool. And then I know that the director commentary is my favorite part of DVDs. When I get movies, my wife hates that. But I love to kind of get all that background information of the actor had a cold that day, and so he skipped that line. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to have this commentary that did analysis of our 2-minute clips. But I couldn't do it like the director commentary because you only have a 2-minute clip. And so that's where we got the idea of the pop-up. which is you see a little pop-up that comes on the screen that says, hey, if you would like some background information, click on that. It'll pause the movie. We'll branch to that background information, provide it for you, and when you're done, you can continue on with the movie again. And so, for example, in this phrase right here, in Portuguese, whether the adjectives go before or after the noun is kind of tricky. And this one, it kind of is unexpected. As a professor, I know my students don't understand this yet. And so, as the video goes on, we have a pop-up which will explain why that adjective goes before or after. Sometimes we have pop-ups that are culture-based. Sometimes we have them on information-based. Sometimes it's a grammar thing, a vocabulary thing. But what it does is it pauses the video, branches off to a deeper explanation, and when they're done, the video continues on again. And so that's what you see here on this one, is there pop-ups coming up here. And then here's the pop-up. In this case, they mentioned a Brazilian performer who my students may or may not know anything about. So it's a good time to stop the video clip, branch to it, talk about that kind of music, talk about who he is, and continue on again with a video. So I think the pop-up commentary adds this level of analysis that allows the students to dig even deeper. And that's what I'm trying to get them to learn how to do, is dig and dig and dig in things they normally wouldn't dig into. Also the website here that goes with, now that was so we're talking about what helps them understand the videos. We have the translations, we have the transcripts, we have the pop-ups, and we also provide the students PDF files with all of the dialogues, everything, and all little notes and translations. So side by side, they can open up the PDF file as well on that site. I'm going to be talking more about this. Is one of the things I really wanted to focus on a lot, but another section of this is each video has its own discussion blog where students can write comments, ask questions, those sort of things. And I'll come back to that in a little bit in more detail. We also then have options for people with their mobile devices to, in many different ways, download the video clip themselves. And so although we have the website that has all the translations and the transcripts and everything else, we also have the option to just plain old download it all by yourself so you can put it into your device and listen to it anytime, anywhere. And so you can subscribe to us on iTunes, and every time we get a new lesson it says, go get another one. After we started using this for a while, with student feedback, we realized that I just love to see what students click on and what they don't click on. And so this has actually gone through a couple of semesters worth of students using them. And so we've made some enhancements in terms of they want to go to the next lesson or they want to be able to go back here. And so I think we've had some nice improvements on the site and the design because of that. So what are our topics? We really wanted to choose a slice of life here. So we have the one about the pets. After that, we have people who are going to, I don't know if you know, but Rio and São Paulo have quite a rivalry. And so neither likes one of another. And so this is a talk about, do you want to go to trip to Rio? We have one on hobbies. We have one on relationships, people asking for love advice and they don't want to give it. We have another one here on food items, and we have another one on working out. And this working out, you're going to see all of a sudden we went high tech. This was our first attempt to go out of the studio, into the community. We went down to the gym, just went down and had people working out and sit and chat while they're working out and just videotaped them as they did that. So we kind of had a uptick in quality there. We had talked to people about getting married, so we had a weddings one. This one was really interesting in that we had a grandma and a grandpa from Brazil who were visiting their grandkids for Christmas. We said, hey, you're in town. Let's videotape you talking to your grandchildren. And it was beautiful. They started talking about little games, the computer games the kids played versus the games I used to play when I was a boy. And just ended up being a beautiful, beautiful video clip of grandpa interacting with grandchildren. Really, really nice. We have one of mothers talking in the park while the kids are playing in front of them. We have here picking up kids at school and kind of people talking while they're waiting for their kids to get out of school. We had people going to stores and buying stuff at stores. We had people lost on campus and didn't know how to get around. We had people that are in a car and they hate traffic. We had people that were gossiping about others at work. We had people playing a soccer game, one group won, one group lost. And then we had a bunch of musicians in town. We just said, get together and have a jam session and we'll record you, have your jam session. But we don't really care about your music. We care about all the chit chat you do in between takes. And it was pretty fun. Just let the camera roll, let them practice music, and then we got really neat stuff in between. And since they really didn't know each other for real, they really did have to kind of do neat stuff in between to make it go. And then for our pop-ups that I told you about, as we recorded those pop-ups every lesson, after a while we said, this is kind of cool. We spent an hour in the recording studio making our little pop-up recordings, and we have great discussions among ourselves. So this was our behind-the-scenes one. We had people record us doing comments about the other lessons. It was neat. And so we have that one as well. So those are all our topics. And again, you can see our efforts. Slice of life, have people do real things, don't script it, just let them go. And for every topic, we have at least 2 clips. So we will have one set of people do the role play and another set of people do the same role play. Okay, so now how do we make things more interactive? And there are a couple of things here we want to talk about, and I'll go in a few of them in details and a few of them just briefly as an overview. 342, we're doing pretty good, right? The first one is what we call our Brazil pod integration. And we have a number of materials at UT that little by little we've created over the years. Some are student generated, some we made ourselves. And what we find ourselves doing is some of the materials we use one semester, we link with students another semester. That is totally new for us, isn't it? We used to live in a world that when the semester was over, student work was done. They would write their reports, they would take their test, we would grade it, and it was really the end of it. But because we now have blogs and wikis and all that other stuff, what is happening is student work from one semester gets retooled, redone, changed up, modified in subsequent semesters. In my 20 some odd years of teaching, that's a new thing. I can now connect my students cross groups. And that means that if I'm working on a wiki one semester, I can have students keep working on it the next semester. If students have done some really creative things with video one semester, I show students next semester those video clips. And if they make video clips, they're competing with the previous semester. Oh, if that's what they did, well, I can do this too. And so the Brazil pod is a collection of all of the materials that we have for our students here at UT, but they're connected cross semesters. If you take a recommendation out of this, it is link your people together with projects from one semester to another. I'll give you one quick example. I now teach a large lecture style course where we have students take class notes. And okay, group X, you do the class notes for today. And then we will post that on the course blog or the course wiki. I get instant feedback of what they got from the lecture. And then we go back to that site again as we prepare for the exams. And next semester, I've even got the record of what the students did last semester when they're learning that topic. It's really cool. And so Brazil Pod for us brings it all together. And the topics you just saw of pets, mothers in the park, those are all topics we've also used in other classes for other projects. So we have student videos on those same topics. We have student reports on those same topics. It's been pretty neat to be able to merge things across topics, across semesters, and we now have one site for that. The student blog comments, I'm going to show you that in a second here. It has totally changed my world, and I think you'll see why in a second. As an open resource, we have had actual requests from people to say, that is cool. Can we change that for our own university, our own courses, our own language? And we're happy to share that with a little warning of, if you don't have a Natalie in your life, you're in trouble. But it's open for people to know that. Facebook fans, you know, I'm just not totally into it yet. I keep trying, but my students are. And I am really finding out that if I don't have a Facebook page of our materials, I'm losing out. That's where the discussions go. That's where they talk first. That's where they want to like it. And it's kind of fun to be liked by people. And so all we have to do is get the thing rolling. It's students who told us to do it. I didn't start my Facebook fan page of these materials. They did. And then we have to kind of keep it going after that. And then in terms of the iTunes subscriptions, just to give you an example, our Tá Falado series, which is our podcast we have for Portuguese, about 80% of our traffic comes from iTunes. That's how people find us, and that's where most of the people use it from. If we didn't have that as a vehicle, 80% of the people that use our materials wouldn't ever find it. And it's crazy. It was what, like 300,000 hits a month is what the site was getting for a while, you know? And 80% of that traffic came from iTunes. So it really was worth it for us to put our materials there. Okay, let me show you a little bit about, here's the Brazil Pod website. It's gorgeous. Again, brings together all the projects that we have that way. We have the interviews, the student videos, the student projects, the Clica Brasil, just tons of stuff that way. But this I wanted to show you. Now that we have a blog that goes with materials, one of the questions becomes, how do I use these things in my actual classroom when I'm with my students? Because generally I will assign them to watch the videos and study them from home. But now as they make comments on the blog about the videos, what happens is I get this instant feedback of topics for classroom application. Generally what I'll say is, you need to post your question or your comment by 3 o'clock in the morning. And then when I get up at 6, I can start checking their comments. By the way, if you say by midnight, you're creating problems. Students never know which day midnight is. Is midnight the last day or the next day? And so I then changed it to 1 o'clock to avoid the problem. But students are still doing homework at 1. I found that 3 o'clock's a way better time. It avoids the I'm still up studying problem, and it avoids the what day is it when it's midnight. And so I make the assignment due at 3 o'clock. That's a freebie. Write that baby down as today's what you need to learn. Sign up for 3 o'clock. But just let me give you a couple of examples here. This one says, faixa is a word I had never heard before. And I'm like a little confused about this word brigadeiro, about being avenues that are in São Paulo. Is that like an expressway or a freeway? And then you've got this word ter pego and foi entregue. That's really confusing. You're going to have to explain that to me, Orlando, because it's irregular form. And then it says people buzina. Does that mean they honk their horns? Wow, my students are giving me what I need to do in class tomorrow. This is literally what I do now. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, I open up my blog post, and I go through by every student, and I write down what are the questions they're asking, and I show up in class and I say, you know what, we need to talk about brigadeiro and marginal for a little bit. You know what, we got to talk about ter pego and pegado a little bit. My whole decision about the grammar, the vocabulary, everything I reinforce is no longer me making the decision. It's my students generating the ideas of what I want to talk about in class. You know how great that is? I mean, literally, if anything has changed my world and the way I teach my class, this is it. I no longer have this powerful, almighty, today we're going to talk about X. I get to choose, based on their comments, what we talk about in class. And isn't that great feedback? They've just told me vocabulary words they don't understand, grammar concepts they don't understand, and cultural issues. I got all three just from one person. Not only are they allowed to comment, but other students will. So in the blog, quite often, you'll see another student that already has answered that question. And not only that, that means next semester, when we teach this same lesson again, we've already got all the students' questions from the previous semester. And so you've already got a record of other things that people have talked about. And so it is not uncommon at all for students to be answering student questions. And you know I'm darn sure to make sure I recognize that in class. Thank you, Neil. Thank you for answering. That was a great answer, you know, and so we really milk that baby for all it's worth. This one, for example, is a really good example because brigadeiro is the Portuguese word for brigadier. But Brazilians don't know that, or our students don't know that, because for them, brigadeiro is a little candy. Now, it's because a brigadier's symbol looks like this little flowery thing, right? And the candy looks like a little flowery thing. And so the candy looks like the brigadier's rank. And so they called the candy brigadier. My students don't know that. They just think the candy is called Brigadeiro. And all of a sudden, they have these streets called Brigadier Gonzalez. And they're going, why do they name this street after some candy? You know? And that's the exact sort of stuff we can milk out of this, because that topic would never come up in a regular class. But it comes up because somebody just happened to say in the video clip, we're going to go on Brigadeiro Tomares Limas Street. And then that's what natural speech gave me a reference to something like that. The word faixa is the word for a lane. And there are tons of words about where are lanes and what does it mean, and they didn't get that one at all. Let me just look at the next one here. It says, I didn't really understand well that phrase, me chuta meu retrovisor, because I didn't really understand what you mean by me chuta. And also I thought that Brigadeiro was a candy, right? Does it have some sort of other meaning as well? So there we go, you see? And now the first one is great because there are some verbs that you can have a direct object, and it kind of means they kicked it on me. They didn't kick me, they went and kicked it on me. You know? So what they're saying is guys drive by and they kick the mirror in the car. And so they kicked it on me. Great, you know, that is something that I probably would have stopped listening to. And as the professor guy, I kind of forget what's cool and what's important. I love to be reminded by the students, you know, you're right. I have never talked to those students about that topic, and that would be confusing for intermediate level students. I better do that today. It's really been neat for me to learn new topics to bring up, because you all know, us old guys, we kind of have our little pattern, you know? And it's like, oh, you just said that, this is the answer I always give, you know? And after a while, we kind of forget that maybe there should be some new topics that get thrown into there. This has caused me to create new topics, because now I'm answering the students' questions instead of mine. The next one says, what does it mean to driblar with difficulty? And Valentino said the word ziggy-zaggy isn't used when you talk about your traffic. So when do you use the word ziggy-zaggy? Now this comment needs a special note as well. That comment comes from a pop-up. Now I know my students aren't just listening to the video clip, but they're actually now asking questions about the commentary in the pop-up. Yes, that's neat too. And so I'm really pleased to see that they're really digging in with it that way. Let me say one more thing about our pop-up. The objective of the pop-up is to clarify things they may not understand. When we first started doing the pop-ups, we would have usually two Brazilians that were chit-chatting about it and me. I made the mistake of speaking 100% Portuguese. What happened then is our pop-up was actually more complicated than the initial problem they had, because they couldn't follow my Portuguese and their Portuguese to talk about those issues. So what we did is I started speaking English in the pop-ups. They kept talking Portuguese in their answers. It was this weird mixture of me talking in English and them responding in Portuguese that gave us enough context that we could actually clarify the issue, still hear the descriptions in Portuguese, but get enough help along the way because I was speaking English with it. It was this weird mixture that worked. And so hopefully we'll get a chance to see that as well when we look at a couple of pop-ups. And I got to make sure I'm not going too crazy on this, because we got 5 minutes, right? Anyway, so if there's anything that changes your world and anything that I would say take home as your takeaway, it is if you can get that feedback from students in a blog form or wiki form or whatever it is, it'll totally transform the way you approach class with your students, because you're getting feedback from them prior to getting in class. I've really loved that. Also in terms of open resources, we have had actual people just in the world that say, hey, those are pretty neat activities. I like them so much, I've made lesson plans. Total strangers have made lesson plans to go with Conversa Brasileira. And so we now have a way through Coral that they can submit whatever they've done and it becomes part of the big package. Isn't that cool? And so here's one from a lady in London who liked our lessons, made lesson plans, and are now posted as Google Docs on our site. And we've already talked that people like us on Facebook. We're so happy they like us. And I should say again that this was created with the grant funds from the International Research Studies. I know how IRS It's kind of fun to say that and have it mean something totally different. The IRS made this. What are they getting credit for? So with the last 5 minutes, let me just show you a little bit about what the... well, with whatever time we have left, let's look at just an actual site here. So this is the lesson on people in traffic. They're complaining and moaning and groaning about being stuck in traffic and they have somewhere to go. And again, I am under no illusion that you speak Portuguese. You don't even need to speak Portuguese. But just get a feel for how these things sound so natural here. See the pop-up coming up. Another pop-up coming up. All right, turn off the words. Okay, so here's a pop-up, stops it, moves on over. So do you see that mix? There's something about the visual that we have, me speaking English, and them carrying on in total natural Portuguese that comes together for our intermediate level students, and they get it. They get that clarification that way. And you can see that when I spoke Portuguese initially, you can see how much tougher that task would be. And also the fact that we have the written words there of what they're saying, a lot of times photographs or pictures or graphics that go along with it as well. At any point, you hit the word back, and then our video continues on again. And what I find impressive is, these are not actors. These are graduate students and lecturers that just happen to be here in Austin, and we said, okay, here's the situation. You're in traffic, you got a meeting to go to, you're upset, go. And they just did it, And usually what we do is we do 2 takes, They kind of do a little practice run. And there's something about having it be natural like that they just go with it. And if we had ever said, and I never ever will, oh, you've got to use XYZ word. Or let's put blah, blah, blah grammar term in there so you can use a past subjunctive when you're talking. No, we would totally destroy it, wouldn't we? The second we would give them a script, we would be gone. But because we don't have a script, it just came out gorgeous. And the other thing that was really interesting about this clip is up till this point, we had happy people. We recorded the people that love the dogs. We recorded this, recorded that. This was our first one where the emotion was different. This was frustrated people in a car mad. And when she says, I told you we should have never moved to this town. And when he says, calm down, it's really your fault. You take so long getting ready. And she just explodes, with, don't you dare tell you it's my fault. So we get a whole new emotion we didn't have before. And later on we have the soccer game. We had one team that won and one team that lost. It is really fascinating to see what came out different because of that.
Can you play, I have favorites, can you play the jam session?
Yeah, sure, we can do that for a little bit too. But you see what's happening, how it's all coming together here a little bit. Let's play the jam session for just a second. And oh, yes, and you also have the option, notice the little button up here, turn off pop-up. So if you don't want to have those things keep coming up on you, you can, oh yeah, see, we're here to please you. You don't want the pop-up? We get rid of the pop-up. Okay, jam session. Let's kind of just take a quick peek at that one here.
Are other departments doing the same kind of thing?
Menina, vem cá meu coração.
Porque tem um compasso completamente diferente. Completamente mais alongado.
Eu estou preparando uma apresentação que eu vou fazer e eu vou tocar aquela música. Mas eu estou aprendendo a decorar, né? É difícil, né? E daqui a pouco passa.
And here's our little pop-up.
Memorize the words of the song and uses the verb decorar. Tell me about the verb decorar in Portuguese.
A ideia é exatamente essa, memorizar.
And then continue on.
Legal. Então vamos para a próxima, que a gente está pensando que é tentar o que? Asa branca ou a gente continua no shot ainda?
Qual que era o outro shot que a gente queria tocar mesmo?
And what made this, they really didn't know each other. They'd never played together before. And so it really was what's going on. And what they're referring to is he's singing one song, and all of a sudden, just off the top of his head, he took the words to a different song and superimposed it. And it's a song that has a total different rhythm and style to it. And it came out just spur of the moment awesome. And that's why the one guy who's playing the drum there says, "That was amazing. How did you do that?" And he goes, "Well, I've been trying to memorize this song for another gig I'm going to play next week, and it just kind of popped in my brain as I was playing here, so I kept on going with it." Isn't that cool? That's the way to talk back and forth.
Have you considered in those pop-ups everything in the target language rather than asking them in English and they're responding in Portuguese? To have the whole thing in Portuguese?
The pop-up? Again, that's how we initially did it. And we just found out it was too much for the students because, again, the reason you have the pop-up is to clarify things they're already not understanding. And it was just something about, it was too much of a heavy load, and that's why we took that step back. I didn't think I was going to do it that way, and we just, after we listened to them and we showed them to students, we just realized it's not clarifying it. And it's just digging a new hole in a new area, and that's why we took that step back. And that's why I say this works for us. It works to have, they're still speaking Portuguese, we still have the visuals, but my adding the English just brought it so they were able to process the whole thing. And I know that's kind of a chancy thing to do language-wise, especially at this level, but it seems to work for us that way.
You also said that you take it apart depending on the level of the students. Can you show us some examples? How would you process this video for beginners and how would you process it for adults?
Well, I think it's more there are things that I can observe grammar-wise that are level-based. For that example I just gave you, that kick the mirror as you go by. That's the sort of thing that for some students at a lower level, I'd totally ignore. You know, and I'd just carry on if they understood, kicked me. But that idea of it was kicked on me, that's a certain thing that I know that a student at a different level is going to appreciate better. Another.
If they ask in the blog, what about this? Would you ignore it or would you?
No, I would not ignore it at all. But I will. But the sort of description I give in class is going to be level appropriate, I might say. Some things it's like, here's to answer your question is what it is, da 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 da. But I wouldn't focus on it and make it my whole lesson for the day. But that's what I do choose. As I see the students' comments, I then make the choice, what am I going to focus on today? Well, I've got 3 students asking about this. We haven't talked about that for a long time. Great. And so I don't really know before the semester starts all the topics we're going to deal with in class because it's those that come up based on their discussions that way. And it really depends on the students.
So how often do you use them, or is this the whole course based on?
In our normal 15-week course that meets 3 times a week, I will usually use this one of the days a week. So for us, it's a 1 day a week activity as part of the rest of the class that way. Just so you know, as a follow-up to this class, we usually have them writing short essays, and generally it's on the same topics that they've been dealing with here. So if we're looking at the videos on pets, that might be their writing assignment as well. When we're talking about traffic, that sort of thing, that might be an experience we had an accident. And so we will kind of mix our writing assignments in with the same topics that they're doing there that way.
These are absolutely wonderful, but it really takes a lot of work to do the transcription and all the follow-ups and everything. And I'm wondering, for like a human section, how many hours of work does it take to get it done?
Yeah, if it had not been for the grant, we wouldn't have done this, to be quite honest. because it's pretty labor intensive. But we had the assistance of the Liberal Arts College to do the actual videotaping. We had money to provide for somebody to do the transcribing and translating. We had tech support people to do the recording of our pop-up sessions. And then we had the tech support people to do the design of everything. So this clearly is a project that would not have been done if we didn't have other sources to do it. You will see some of the earlier lessons, we didn't have that money as much. And it is a little simpler the way it was presented that way. But to answer your question, it takes a hunk of hours to do this. It was more labor intensive than I think we were really prepared for in some ways. Yeah. Right. We could add more anytime we wanted to, but I've also because I've taught courses realized that in some ways I have more content than I can actually present in a semester, and so now I pick and choose what I want, and so I think we have enough to appease different interests and different people based on those sort of things. I don't really see the need to create more now just for the sake of creating more.
You said 3 hours a week. Now, this is not the intensive course that Dr. Garza was talking about.
No, this one we actually use more for our 5th semester, 6th semester students that they're already they're into their upper division classes, and we use this as one final, let's take one big look again at the language itself. And so it's kind of that bridge course, you might say, is where we use this the most.
Just one brief question about language itself. Is it Portuguese specifically for Brazil, or you do it?
Yes, this is called Conversa Brasileira, and the topics are all within a Brazil content, all with Brazilian speakers. We don't have anybody from Angola or Portugal at all. It's total Brazilian culture, is all the culture that's brought into it too. And part of that is our audience. That, if I were a university in the East Coast, I would probably have to approach it different. But here at UT, our interest in Portuguese for 99% of our students is Brazilian Portuguese.
Considering that the Olympics are going to be in Brazil, if you were given funding, would you be able to create this kind of clip specific to security, law enforcement, some of the things that would be appropriate for helping in that respect?
It's interesting you ask, because recently the consulate office in Recife in Brazil has asked to create their version of doing English things to teach Brazilians the same sort of things about American culture. And so the consulate office is already taking off with that idea of, hey, we could do this as well, and they're doing their twist on it. For our own purposes, for me personally, since I work in the business school a lot, my issues with World Cup and Olympics are really more related to infrastructure, business side, and so for me, I don't really see this being the same focus that I would put on it. But I do see that others want to do that, like the people in Recife are. But for me, I've got to figure out how to tell them that, yes, the subway really will work, and yes, there will be a hotel to go to, and yes, the airport will have a way to get you to your destination. Because I love Brazilians, but let me tell you, they're pushing that button. They're pushing that button. My guess is my time's about out, which means you get to ask the last question. And yes, the restaurant is on 21st Street in Guadalupe, 2nd floor of the food court, Oma's Kitchen.
One question, looks really good at a classroom session, but have you tried as a standalone lesson, like they can do by themselves? And if it doesn't work, and why?
Well, we do get feedback a lot from people that, because it's open resource and open to anybody in the world, we do get a lot of people that use it just on their own, that are not even part of a class, that are just part of their own private study. And if you look at our Brazil Pod site, we have introductory videos that they can all use. We have podcast lessons for those that are starting out as well. And now we have these for more of the intermediate and advanced students. And then we have the Clica Brasil, which is more for the grammar study at a higher level as well. So it really does work as a standalone for those that want to do it. We don't do it that way, but we get tons of people that do. And up to this point, it's been fun to get their feedback and questions and participate in the blogs as well. So it does work as a standalone, I do believe. Well, anybody who got here at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's now 4 o'clock, has done everything you need to do in one day. So I thank you for hanging out till 4.